Some people say you absolutely must study grammar to be fluent. Others say grammar doesn't matter at all. So, which one is true? Is it actually possible to become fluent in English without ever studying grammar? The short answer is yes, it is possible, but it depends on a few things, and we'll get into that. But first, if you're new here, hello, I'm Jean. I've been an English teacher since 2019, and you're listening to English Extras, a podcast designed to make English make more sense. If you learned something new today, please consider subscribing. It's a great way to support my work completely for free. If you're already subscribed, please consider sharing this episode with someone. That's an even better way to support me completely for free. Now, let's get into it. So, in the language learning world, you've got two extremes. On one side, you have the grammar first learners. These are the people with the color-coded charts and the exercise books and the verb conjugation tables. They want to understand all the rules before they speak a single syllable. This is how most people learn a language in school, and this method really works for some people. On the other side, we have the grammar avoidant learners. They're all about input, listening, reading, absorbing, and avoiding grammar books like the plague. They want to pick up English naturally the way children do without ever looking at a grammar rule. Both of these groups have a common goal: become fluent. Both of these groups are also motivated by a specific fear. Those who want to focus on grammar are usually too scared to speak because they don't want to make mistakes. Those who avoid grammar are worried about being bored, wasting their time, or feeling stupid. Here's the thing: you cannot only learn grammar if your goal is to become a fluent speaker, and you cannot ignore it completely. Most successful language learners find a happy medium, meaning somewhere in the middle. What even is grammar anyway? Grammar is a description of language patterns, and each pattern gives you a little packet of information. For example, grammar is the reason why the sentences "I'm going to the store" and "I went to the store" have a different meaning. The information packed into the pattern "to be" plus an ing verb tells us it's an action happening now versus the pattern of a past tense irregular verb, which tells us the action happened and finished in the past. Grammar also includes syntax, which is a linguistic term for word order. In English, the order of words also contains information. Word order often determines meaning. This explains why "the dog bit the man" has a different meaning from "the man bit the dog." The word order changes the meaning. But why does this matter? Grammar is interesting because there is a large gray area between comprehensible and incomprehensible. In many cases, a good vocabulary will protect you from the damage of any grammar mistakes. You can make mistakes and still be understandable. For example, if I say, "I go to the store yesterday," that isn't grammatically correct. It should be, "I went to the store yesterday." But I still understood the meaning. Context and vocabulary can really help balance the impact of grammar mistakes. But the bottom line is, if your goal is to be a fluent English speaker, you cannot ignore grammar. Oh, and by the way, it is not possible to speak without grammar. Some people say that their language doesn't have grammar or grammar doesn't matter. That's a myth, my friend. That's quite simply not true. All languages have rules about what is comprehensible and what is incomprehensible, what makes a proper sentence and what doesn't make a proper sentence. Okay, so we know what grammar is. We know generally how people feel about grammar. But what about for us? What do we need to become fluent? Here's my answer. If you define fluent as understanding native speakers when you listen and being understood by native speakers when you speak, then knowing the meaning of different patterns will help you. You will understand nuance when you listen, and you will be more accurate when you speak. Does this mean you have to go buy a grammar book? Absolutely not. Does this mean you can ignore grammar entirely? You can, but your progress will be significantly slower and you're more likely to keep making the same mistakes even when you're advanced. Let's talk about finding a happy medium. Like I said before, a happy medium is something that is nicely in the middle, something that has good things from both sides. If you'd like to learn more about the vocabulary I use in this episode, you can download the transcript completely for free. It contains definitions and example sentences, as well as an episode summary. Link in the description. If you've been following me for a while now, you've probably heard me say this already, especially if you watch any of my live streams. Learning a language is like learning any other skill. The best way to improve your English is the same way you improve any other skill. So, learning about how to learn, how you learn, is the biggest tool you can have in your toolbox. Grammar is just one skill inside learning a language. So, when you start thinking about how to learn grammar, it will help if you also start thinking about what methods help you learn the most. What works for some people is not guaranteed to work for you too. And what works for you is not guaranteed to work for others. First, check your expectations. If you expect mastering grammar will be easy, you are going to experience a lot of frustration and you will want to give up. If you expect grammar to be a breeze, then when you encounter something difficult, you will feel awful. You will question yourself. You will feel unmotivated. You will want to give up. However, if you change your expectations and realize that mastering grammar will be difficult sometimes, but ultimately something you can master, you will be a lot less frustrated with yourself because you expect it to be difficult sometimes. Same thing goes for learning speed. So many learners tell me, I don't notice any progress. I've been learning English for 6 months and I don't see any progress. You need to have measurable goals because your feelings will lie to you. Your feelings are not reflective, meaning accurate, of reality. So you need something you can measure. You can do this in a variety of ways. Let's say you want to master the present simple and present perfect verb tenses. Cool. You have a goal. Check. You have reasonable expectations because you know it's not going to be a walk in the park. Check. Now you need to be able to measure something. You can measure how much time you're spending on it. Every time you start focusing on learning those verb tenses, start a stopwatch. Track how much time you're spending on it. You can measure how many sentences you study. If you use flashcards, you can measure how many times you review. Also, flashcards can help you measure how often you're correct and how often you get something wrong. That's your accuracy you can measure. You can also measure your accuracy by recording yourself speaking for a few minutes, then counting all the times you used the present simple and present perfect tenses, and all the times you used them correctly and all the times you used them incorrectly. Now, learning a new skill, like grammar, is a slow process. Do not expect to master it in an afternoon. Mastery comes from a lot of repetition. You should be looking at your measurements every month or every 3 months, not every day. It's like tracking your weight. Weighing yourself every day is just a data point. It is not the trend. You're looking for trends, trajectory, tendency. Do not focus on one single day. Look at your trajectory over time. So, which grammar should you learn? There are a lot of grammar rules in every language. Which rules do you learn? Which rules do you learn first? If you have absolutely no idea about any grammar, then I recommend starting to build some awareness. Find websites, there are so many of them available for free, that teach A1 level grammar. Browse that grammar. It'll probably be present simple, past simple, future simple, possessive pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, modal verbs like can and could, articles and quantifiers, how to form questions, etc. If you're already familiar with all of that, brilliant. Go up to the next level. Look at A2 grammar. Familiar with all of that too? Fantastic. Keep exploring grammar patterns at different levels to find what is unfamiliar or that you haven't mastered yet. Become aware of the pattern and its meaning. Then, when you're listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, or reading a book, look for that pattern. Start building connections between the pattern and the meaning in context. Again, measure it. It's not a bad idea to measure how much input you're getting. You don't have to only measure your output. If there's a grammar pattern you are just struggling with, that's a sign to focus on it a bit more. You will improve whatever you focus on. Identify the problem. Do you understand it when you hear it in context, but you can't accurately produce it in a conversation? That's great information. Try different methods for building accuracy in speaking. If you already feel comfortable learning grammar, maybe you're like me and you actually really like studying grammar, make sure you're not just taking in the grammar. Remember, if we're defining fluent as not only understanding native speakers, but also being understood by native speakers when we speak, then we have to make sure we are also practicing our speaking. So, if you're comfortable studying grammar and you know the grammar well on paper, then make sure you're also seeing it in context via YouTube videos, podcasts, TV shows, music, books, etc. And that you are practicing using it in speaking. If you don't have a teacher or conversation partner, fine, speak to yourself. It might feel weird, but it will help prepare you for making your own sentences in real conversations. Think of it like building muscle. You can't just go to the gym and lift the heaviest weight there. You have to build the muscles slowly over time. That's what speaking to yourself is. It's building your speaking muscle. Some other tips for you when it comes to grammar. Make sure you're paying attention to whole phrases or sentences. Grammar, like vocabulary, does not exist in a vacuum. You're going to use it in context, so make sure you're studying it in context. If you use flashcards, make sure you're making each flashcard with an entire phrase or sentence, not an individual word. So let's recap. You cannot only study grammar, and you cannot ignore it. You have to find a happy medium. Understand that it will not always be easy. Expect some difficulties along the way. You have to experiment with different methods and techniques so you can learn more about how you learn best. Build awareness of grammar by exploring, not studying, exploring grammar patterns at different levels, starting with A1. Measure everything somehow. Don't base your progress on feelings. Of course, even with all this, there's still the problem of fear, specifically the fear of being wrong. Oh, it is a curse, it is. Here's what I'll say about mistakes. Fluency requires a history of making mistakes. Do you know why? Because mistakes are the evidence that we are learning. You cannot avoid them, certainly, so you might as well work on getting more comfortable with them. Thinking about it this way may help. The goal is not to eliminate mistakes. The goal is to upgrade them. Beginner mistakes are random. You're just guessing. But intermediate mistakes are more patterned. You're applying rules, just not always correctly. And advanced mistakes are subtle because you're navigating nuance. That right there, that's progress. So stop trying to be perfect. Start trying to be better than you were last month. If you want to learn more about how successful learners think about mistakes, because how you handle them makes a huge difference, make sure you check out this video. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or somewhere else, you'll find a link in the description. And if this episode helped you, share it with someone who's learning a language. They might need to hear this too. Thanks for listening. Until next time, my friends. Bye.